Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the Black Diamond Authority podcast. We've got Amos Hobson, CEO of Black Diamond Authority. How you doing today?
Good, good. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm Jarek Moore. I represent Reversible LLC. I'm partnered with Amos here, and we're looking to bring you some excellent content today. And today's first topic is workflow and how we integrate, what we do in our processes into our artistic everyday lives. So, Amos, what does your daily process look like when you're creating artwork?
Just so for me, my normal routine starts with checking inventory, making sure I have the right, tools, mediums, everything is in their proper, position and quality. And then I think about a topic first thing that comes to mind to kind of wake me up. I'm not a big fan of the quote unquote art warm up where you're doing repetition of like circles, squares to kind of get you warmed up. I kind of just jump in cold. It does limit my artwork when it comes to how long I can do like a certain session, but it's more comfortable for me to go that route. From there, I like to just do a simple one topic, four colors. And with that, I like to, once those four colors kind of make their mark, I look back and see what else is needed. If it's more colors, shading, rendering, whatever it is. And then I don't touch it for about a day. Everything is always in the moment, always feels done, but maybe it's not. So I give it a day, fresh eyes to kind of get an idea of, am I satisfied? And if I am, cool. If not, we add to it.
For me, I like to work in the moment, and I know if I pick up after the fact, if like I put something down, it's never usually the same or how I want it to be the next day. And so I usually go from point A to point B, whether it's lots and lots of hours pouring time in with the process. It's just something that I do. Granted, it usually depends on what medium I'm working with. So if I'm penciling something one day, maybe I'll do all pencils one day, and then pen and ink the next day, and then move into colors if I'm working on like an illustration. But if I'm doing digital, it's everything all at once. And then sometimes I can take it into chunks as long as I have a good consistent base for how I know I want to complete the piece. But as an artist, you got to be malleable, and I like to think that if I have a particular vision for something one day, and I want to see that vision, I got to kind of stay the same because the next day never says, okay, well, however I saw it yesterday, maybe I want to change it up this way or do it differently today. And sometimes you make those good decisions and it comes out right because you did it that way. But for consistency's sake, especially when you're creating things like comic books or media like that, you want to be able to say that you did it the way that you wanted to see the end goal be.
For sure, I agree. For sure. I just guess I'm just weird with it mostly because, like, I guess that's why I kind of focus on like a certain topic. That way I don't go too far from the idea. So, for example, if I'm doing like a sunset, for example, I know regardless of how I feel 2 days from now, the sun still has to be there. Some details might change, like you were saying, but at the end of the day, the topic still stays pretty much the sunset. And I think doing it in small topics or patterns for me helps me out to keep it more unique because, anyone could do a sunset, but how can I make my sunset reflects my art style, but also make it very unique at the same time? So I think that's why I kind of do it based on like a topic or a theme. And then I like to limit myself to see how unique it can really get by doing, like I said, a four color count to start off. And then who knows, later on, I might add more in.
Gotcha. There is a division, for some people, anyways, when it comes to the art world, whether you are a traditional artist, a fine artist, whether you are a digital artist. What space do you like to say that you kind of reside in when it comes to where you are as an artist?
Believe it or not, I am still traditional.
Oh, okay.
Every artwork from anyone who's ever bought any of my pieces, the original exists. All colors, all shading. My strategy with doing it is I noticed there's kind of a little bit of thievery going on within the art community. So whenever that time comes for, oh, he took my piece, it's like, nope, date sign, original here, Here's the digital timestamp as well. Try again. But mostly I've always enjoyed traditional. I can always take a sketch pad and a pencil, just like another artist can take a tablet and an art pen and do the same. I just always like the fascination of different paper texture, what material looks best on it, and then just not having to be limited to a power source as well. With doing was it like a tablet or using their cell phone in some situations doing your digital art. I normally just complete the whole piece and then upload it digitally to just redo it. So yes, it's more work, but it's kind of like my median of being a traditional artist that's willing to adapt. And that's kind of what I'm doing now.
Do you have a favorite stage within the art process that you particularly gravitate towards the most? I know for me personally, it's always the pencil stage because I feel like when you work with pencil and you get to see how loosely you can work or how not complete it is if you're gonna go with ink or go with watercolor afterwards. It's so malleable in the form that it's in that there's so much expression within it that you kind of lose that depending how you take it to the next step within the process. What about you? Do you have a favorite step within the process that you?
I would say the shading, because the shading makes a piece. What's the word I'm looking for? It sets the tone. From the light source coming from below the character can make them look intimidating, but if the light's coming from the back of a character, it's a silhouette. If the light's coming from the front, most of the time it shows fear or expression. The lighting or the shading is always the most important because it sets the tone, like I said, and it's always interesting because I never know what tone I want to set until I've already started, and at that point, the guy I thought who was scared is actually intimidating, or vice versa, and doing it that way always kind of keeps me just as surprised as the customer who buys it.
Gotcha. I like that. In regards to what the future of art looks like for you, where do you want to see your artwork go from where it is now?
Even though I'm kind of doing it now, there's not too much of I wouldn't say following because that seems kind of shallow, but I would say a big support group, if you will, being a traveling artist. Yeah, we travel now, but there's never been a situation where because my art piece made it to Wyoming, people recognize me like a Banksy piece. I kind of want that type of following where my artwork sells everywhere, and I would just like to see that interaction between me and my fan base a little bit more, which I plan on working on this year as one of my main goals. But that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind.
Gotcha. Within the art community, do you think it's important to have a consistent style or body of work in order to be successful in what you do? Or do you think having a diverse portfolio of different art helps you better encapsulate who you are as an artist and build a bigger following because you can reach different people?
I will say diverse. There's a popular artist that I sometimes like look over on IG for inspiration, Adam Tots, if people are familiar. But in the beginning stages, the art was a little rough. It was a stage before stick figures, but now he's doing crisp, clean, almost Marvel DC level artwork for fun. And I think people appreciate progression. Even if it's not the art style they don't like, they can see the progression of, okay, he's using more coloring, more shading. His people look more like people. Now they're getting more defined. Now it looks almost like gaming characters. And even though it might fall out of one group's favorite art style, appreciation is still appreciation. Mm-hmm. And I would say diverse is cool because people will still follow you from back in the day to what you're doing now, which is catching a new group. So I kind of think it's almost like a domino effect for as you change yourself, your fan base will change over the years and in most situations grow.
Gotcha. Trying to build an art house where you bring in a ton of different artists to represent the Black Diamond Authority brand. For you, consistency amongst all of the artists, is that something that's important to you, or do you feel like an individual's individual style, for lack of a better way to express that, is something that you think will better brand what your company is about?
Gotcha. That's a good question. I would say individuality is supreme when it comes to being creative as a whole. If we all have the same goal, if we're all doing it differently, it still makes it to the same goal. And if anything, it gives a different perspective of who you follow. Like if more follow you, but not me, they'll still see me at the finish line and vice versa. So I would say individual for sure. That way, there's not a lot of, like I said in the last podcast, a few of the same type of artists. Everyone's doing their own thing. So they're making sure it's the best that they're able to, show off or, interpret in the best way that they can because they're not copying your style or my style. It's 100% them wherever that journey takes them.
Mm-hmm. There is such a divide depending on where you are age-wise on what is considered art and what is not. I know a lot of young people these days have definitely been introduced to like manga and anime. Shout out to all our anime lovers out there. But do you feel like that body of work is considered art in every location that should be appreciative of it? Like I know, for instance, here in America, there are a lot of people that love anime and manga for sure, but there are a lot of people that still don't consider it to be a true art form. I know in college, for me, it was definitely deemed as derivative or uninspired, and I was one of those people that avidly fought for, no, it's art. It's a person's interpretation on how they look at the world, and they did it by themselves with their own hands, and not everything might not look anatomically correct, or it might look different than what we're used to, but it's still art in its own way. So my question for you is, do you think that everywhere you go, if somebody considers something art, it should be able to be considered art?
I say yes and no. The definition's always loose to the context. An artist's version of art will always look different than a consumer's definition, and that's mostly separated by talent and structure, either educational wise with the school or learning from some other form of education for experience. But I would say, for a whole, I do think people recognize the manga anime. They might not support it, but worldwide everyone does agree that it's some form of art or content that's in the realm of art. It just might not be as high as other people, but it might be lower for some, and then it might be someone's main force of entertainment and what they look for on a daily basis. Me and myself, I kind of like to do a little bit of both. I focus on some anime more than other. One Piece is probably what most people know me for, because it has a little bit of everything. But not all anime is the equivalent of another, so that's why I kind of feel like there always will be that division until people kind of figure out the one that they are willing to kind of give a try. But for the art to art, I would say anything that was done with the interpretation of being creative and unique that isn't easily followed or copied can count as art.
Gotcha. And the last part you said definitely leads us into our next topic of whether or not things like AI art should be considered art. And I know everybody has their vision on that. I am definitely in the camp more so towards it as I am as opposed to it. I think you're definitely one of those people that, not quite in for it yet. And I can understand that, when you take the idea of plugging in prompts into a generator and you pull from different artists in order to create a new piece, you're taking from another artist's work and you're not giving them credit. And in that vein, I think that's unfair. Me personally, because I know we talked about it in a previous video, I think that it's all about context and how you do it. I'll give you a prime example. If you create a prompt that doesn't list another artist and you use a bunch of, let's say, random words, for instance, and you come up with that idea for whatever that piece is supposed to be, you have become the artist, but you have not necessarily created it by hand. I used this example with a friend of mine earlier. Imagine somebody that writes a book and it gets adapted to a movie. Is the author the artist of that piece, or is the person that depicted the movie the actual artist that has, made what it is? They gave you the prompt to go by to develop the visual representation of it, but at the same time, they didn't come up with the original idea or concept of it. How you decide to manipulate the piece after the AI has created the art is up to you. But I think specifically putting in words that steal from another artist is something that should be frowned upon. If you take inspiration and style and make it your own, people do that all the time. You see it when people are learning to draw for the first time. You see it even in art school. They give you representation of many famous artists and tell you, draw like this or emulate this so you can learn how to do these things, and it becomes a part of who your style is. So I think there's definitely a spot where AI can help you develop as an artist, but it shouldn't be one of those things where you take it for what it is and steal, I think is the right word, from another artist. So what are your thoughts that stand on that?
So the last time we talked about it, I was 100% against it, ready with a pitchfork and a torch, and we was gonna burn it down. But I will say, with the addition of you as an artist manipulated that final product, I'm fine with calling that art. My only issue ever was if you type in the prompts, it finishes, and then you run straight out to the markets and say this is all you. And at that point, yes, it's stealing. Then it's another insult when you also make financial gains off of that same product as well. Also a turn off. And then even though I know it's not in the intent to offend, but hearing people choose to do AI art over an original artist because it's a cheaper choice or a faster choice also rubs me the wrong way. Mostly because, and it might trigger some, most clients have ideas but don't know how to articulate them to the point where I'm not having to do like 5, 6 different revisions, where they can do the AR software as many times but don't have an attitude with it. So I feel like there's a natural pull towards one than the other, and I think it's mostly come to convenience.
I got you.
And I get it. I understand that everyone's getting more into the technology side. So for the introverts, less communicating is always going to be the first choice. But if you want something specialized and unique, that's what an artist is supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yet again, like I said, it's one of those things where if you as an artist use it as a blueprint or a starting point, and then you still add whatever you add to it, I'm fine calling that art. But yet again, if you're only doing the prompts, you print it out, put $100 on there, I do not respect you on any level.
So let me ask you this then. So in the same vein, so if you take a bunch of prompts that have no ties to anything else and you create something that's unique and has never been done before, is the piece itself not still art?
It depends on that content, but it also still stems from some artists who submitted their work or their work was replicated for that software.
Mm-hmm.
So to some degree, it still kind of counts if it's just the pure prompts. But if you're using it for like background or like extra texture or something to take your art to another level, I applaud it. I'll take it for what it is. But just the prompts itself, I can't. It's just me.
And that's one of those things that I, as a person, really love because there's such a unique perspective depending on who you ask about it. It's going to be one of those things that's probably going to be here to stay, but it's going to evolve over time. And much like many different things, whether it be photography, digital art, now we got new media, VR, we have performance art and things like that. All those things that were new and not really appreciated when they first came out, but they found their own unique spaces. So I think eventually AI art's going to have its own subsection of what people will be able to appreciate. I just don't think it has that space right now. And who knows? Maybe down the line, most artists will find a way to integrate it into their own workflow. But like I said, for me personally, I like the idea of being able to play with new things and experience things that I haven't had a chance to see. For instance, if I'm looking for a particular idea that I have in my head that I can't seem to be able to put on paper, I can come up with a blueprint for how to see things that I couldn't necessarily see. Now, some people are much better at that than others are. I know I'm one of those people that struggles, but once I'm able to visualize a concept, I'm able to take what that is and make it my own. And I think that's really cool. So
For sure, I agree.
But that is our first segment of the day. That was our segment over workflow. Thank you for joining us on this segment of Black Diamond Authority's podcast, and we'll see you on the next one.